Simone Heng is the author of Let's Talk About Loneliness. Simone, welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It is so wonderful to be here. Tomorrow the book turns 1 year old.
Oh my
So it's been
gosh.
quite a crazy journey.
I'm so proud of, because I follow you on LinkedIn, I see what you're doing, and you're doing incredible things all over the world, Simone. So
Thank you.
props to you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you.
When I first picked up this book, two things struck me. How amazingly well written it is.
Thank you.
How much of yourself you put in it. And you start with a note of real authenticity and vulnerability. A young man reaches out to you out of nowhere. And I was like, wow, she's writing a book about social connection, and she starts with this note of vulnerability. Tell us about the story and tell us why you start there.
Yeah, so a young man reached out to me on TikTok. I had shared a story on TikTok about how a woman in Australia, when I was at university working part-time in a store, had taught me how to apologize. Because as a child with Singaporean parents, like apologizing wasn't really in the household, saying sorry wasn't a thing. And so I learnt it from someone who wasn't a teacher within my own home. And it was meant to be inspiring. And instead, a guy that had served me in a store in Singapore wrote, "I served you and you were the worst customer I had in 6 years." And it brought me right back into a time where I felt deeply disconnected. I was working in a toxic workplace. I was so unhappy. And I thought it was important to open the book by saying, I'm not an expert on this. I know about social connection and loneliness because of how many times I've done it wrong and how hard I've worked to do it better. And now, obviously, being a global voice on the topic, you get exposed to all the experts, all the researchers, and you realize just how important it is to do better. But I hated reading personal development books where people were preaching.
Yeah.
And saying, I'm the master and I've done this right. And I actually think we learn a lot more from doing things the wrong way.
Yeah, I think it's that attitude of utter humility and also the sense that we are a fly on the wall watching you on the journey as you learn about loneliness as well. That makes the book super compelling. And can I just say you're an amazing writer? Have you always known that? You did creative writing as a child, right?
I did professional writing as Units University, and I did a minor in literary studies. So and my mum was a literature teacher at RGS. So for me, language was always, she was the mum that would correct everyone's improper English.
Okay.
In the Australian environment with her Singaporean accent, she went, "That is not correct grammar." And I think all my Australian friends were like, "Why is your mother, what is happening?" So language was important, but it was interesting. I didn't write anything longer than a social media post for 15 years of my career. And then to go from that to writing a full book, and then for the book winning 5 awards is just, it's a crazy story.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all the books achieved in 1 year, one short year, in just a while, including being picked up by Hay House. Just incredible for a Singapore author. We're glad to be able to claim you. But you grew up in Australia, and I want to ask you about your experiences of loneliness and how they feed into this book. So, child of migrants, woman growing up in Australia, so some would say twice marginalized. Talk to us a little bit about how your own perspective on this issue makes its way to the book.
Yeah, so I think there were other people talking about social connection, but very much in the aggregate, so not giving specific examples. So for me, the lens specifically was cultural and with the lens of some relational trauma in terms of growing up as an Asian girl in an Asian household, which means there's a lot of filial responsibility with aging parents. It often goes to the daughters. Those are those things. And then also feeling a lack of belonging within the Australian environment. I'm Singapore born. And even though I look very mixed because my mother's Eurasian and my dad's Chinese, with Australian eyes during the 1990s, during the Pauline Hanson era, who was a far-right politician, I just looked much more Asian than even the other mixed half Aussie girls. And so there was definitely they would definitely look at me like she's a foreign person. And when you have that lack of belonging from very, very young, it definitely sows a seed inside you that can lead to loneliness.
Well said. So how does this book frame loneliness for the rest of us?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we all have to look at is our social health. I think there's huge rhetoric in the last few years on social media about your fitness and your external journey, right? But that internal, forget the external glow up. We should all be having an internal glow up that it looks at how we connect with ourselves in order for us to connect with other people. And we need to look at having ourselves socially satiated by 5 different types of connection. This is really important. Chapter 2 of the book. I don't know how much time we have to touch on it, Michelle, but we don't find all of our connection needs in one individual. It's not just in our husband. It's not just in our partner. We need other forms of connection to be well-rounded. And loneliness is the gap between the quality and the amount of connection you're getting and the quality and the amount of connection you desire. So it's based completely on perception, which is why we're seeing a Gen Z, for example, living in an HTB, multi-generational household, grandma is there, parents are there, but still feeling deeply lonely because the connection nutrition they desire is not there. Maybe they're online a lot, which is the junk food equivalent of social connection. So loneliness is based on perception.
I can't agree more with you. I was just on a panel yesterday on intergenerational bonding, and I was looking at a study, a 2015 Duke and US Medical School Center for Aging Research and Education Care study, which found 2 in 5 Singaporeans aged 62 and older are lonely. But what struck me was another study by Singapore Chinese Health and NUS that found among the older disconnected, the most socially disconnected individuals actually live with their family. So it's not about physical loneliness. We think, you're lonely if you live by yourself in a tiny little apartment, but you can be so lonely in the presence of others.
And I think that's down to we feel lonely when we're around people that don't resonate with the same values as us. I think or when we don't feel fully heard and understood. And I love that there's a growing conversation online and within, I speak for Fortune 500, so within organizations, about this idea of fully seeing people. And that's like a full circle moment back to my childhood where I felt like I was this minority. With the diversity and inclusion movement within organizations, there is a push to make sure that everyone's individual experience is seen and the intersection of those things, whether it's race or gender, are being seen so that they can fight employee loneliness, because it's costing organizations in the US $154 billion a year due to attrition when people are lonely. So we can see this idea of fully being seen as very important.
Really important for employee engagement. Why, in a world where technology has so-called made us feel so connected, do so many of us still feel lonely, Simone?
Yeah, I think, again, it's the junk food version of real in-life connections. So firstly, if we use social media or online technology as the destination, which a lot of Gen Z do, we will be lonely. If we use it as the way station to get to an in real life connection, then we're very, very happy. This just happened to me. I was in Hong Kong. I posted that I was at the Lantau Buddha. Girlfriend of mine, who is a British Chinese author, was at the Lantau Buddha the exact same day. She sent me her photo in front of it. She said, "I'm here right now." Said, "Do you have tomorrow free?" And we met up. And if you use social media, and I'm very active on there, to connect in that way, it's great. But if you are using it as just infinite texting and voice noting without ever meeting, that can form loneliness, because we don't get the same quota of feel-good hormones. We get dopamine from the online, maybe a little bit of oxytocin if we watch a video of our nephew or niece, makes us feel good. But that in real-life touch, we get a higher level of feel-good hormones that soothe our stress response. So we do need that in-person component.
What do you think business leaders, back to the talks that you give, the work that you're seeing in day, what do business leaders need to understand about social connection?
So firstly, that the way we've changed working, the remote hybrid situation, has repercussions. It might increase the human connection a working mother has at home with her children with flexible hours, but there is a huge, and they're concerned about it, dent to productivity, creativity, collaboration, and engagement. So we know corporations have had mission statements since the beginning of time to rally people. And what they found with hybrid work, if someone doesn't have a workplace best friend, they therefore are not engaged in the mission of the team. Then the team is no longer engaged in the greater mission of the organization. Wow. And then on top of that, loneliness is causing people to get sick. So that $154 billion deficit from employee loneliness is to do with the attrition. So people are disengaged, they quit the job, I don't feel connected, I onboarded remotely, I don't feel connected to the organization, so I'm now going to quit, and then it's going to cost the organization huge amounts of money to retrain over and over again new people with that level of attrition.
Do you think there's anything about the Singapore business culture? You're born here in Singapore and you're back here.
Yeah, and a Singaporean parents. And I've worked in a Singaporean organization.
Yes, you have.
So we have high levels of cultural rigidity.
That makes it really, really challenging.
That
for us
makes
to
it
connect.
sometimes makes people feel if there's cultural rigidity, there isn't a way to transcend circumstances, and therefore people disengage. So if they don't feel they can have social mobility, so I'm going to make connections and then I'm going to move up because the culture is very conservative, that also leads to high levels of loneliness amongst employees.
Also, do you think there's a sense of needing to keep a face on to protect the face of the senior people in the organization? And how does this impact your ability to connect?
Yeah, I think that hierarchical form of working, that top-down model, we're seeing globally it's being used less and less. It's just, it doesn't work to make people feel connected. And in other markets, and I don't know how well this will work in Asia, but Singapore is definitely, of the Asian countries, the one we're seeing it being tried out the most, is where leaders feel they can be more connected by being a little bit vulnerable. Therefore, that sets the blueprint to allow employees to do the same.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. That's where you close that hierarchical gap.
You have to model it. We're live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, because it's not every day that we get the global phenomenon that is Simone Heng in my studio. We are reading her book. Let's talk about loneliness. Hey, the book
I don't know where
turns
the camera
one tomorrow.
Tomorrow, our event just sold out. I think we have one ticket left. We're having a party in Sentosa for the book.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you share some simple techniques on human connection that you discuss in the book?
Firstly, I think what we know is if you're in an elevated state, fight or flight state, you can't connect well with others. We see this in Singaporean organizations a lot. The high level of stress, the kanchong nature of living in a very expensive city. So we're seeing global disconnection actually because of capitalism. People are working rather than connecting. So I have a self-connection technique. It's a simple box breathing. We're all going to do it together right now.
Let's do it.
And if you do this for up to 2 minutes, we'll release 5 happy hormones, one of which is oxytocin, which makes us open to connect with others. Okay, so should we do it together?
Let's breathe. Let's breathe.
This is what
Simone.
I do in speeches. This is weird doing it on
Okay,
radio.
let's do it.
Okay, we're going to breathe in through the nose for 4, hold it in our mouth for 4 seconds, and then exhale out of our mouth for 8 seconds. And when I tell you to do this, please don't close your eyes if you're in a car, but I want you to breathe ugly. By that, fill the diaphragm and the whole stomach full of air so we can really oxygenate that blood, okay? So we're going to go in, 2, 3, 4, hold it in our mouth, 2, 3, 4, and exhale out of the mouth now. 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can make an audible sigh as you do this. If you have a high stakes meeting where you need to connect with people, or if you have a nerve-wracking meeting like I used to have a lot at my last workplace, I wish I knew this. It would have calmed me and made me more open to connecting and listen with my colleagues and my superiors. That box breathing helps to cement our connection with ourselves so we connect with other people better.
Yeah, I love that it starts first. I think it's really about soothing and regulating the self.
It is. The nervous system comes down, then we write better emails to our colleagues, we snap less at our children. It all starts with that internal glow up. Not the green juice in the gym. It all, because social connection starts on the inside.
All right, let's take it to the book. 1 year tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Simone, you started this baby, you self-published.
Yeah, so especially if you're listening and you feel like you write in a certain way or what you want to write is a pastiche of different genres, so you don't know if a publisher would take it. I started writing it in the pandemic and I knew it was meant to be a corporate book for my speaking work.
Okay.
And it just came out totally not corporate. And I thought, oh my gosh, what publisher is going to take this? So I
Did you shop it around? Are there some publishers who are hitting themselves on the head now?
Yeah, there are a couple that after it, so I self-published it and then it did really well in Singapore. And then my friend who is a HarperCollins author in another country read it and she was like, the life of this book isn't over yet. Like you can't contain this just to, because it's quite a global story, you know. So she was like, you can't just contain this to Singapore. You have to find a way to get a traditional publisher to take this. So, of course, I shopped it around. Someone said, no, we want you to write something again from scratch. A very big imprint, but the Southeast Asian version of it said, we don't republish anything that's already been seen in the world. And then Hay House discovered it, and they were like, we love it. We're going to put it in every major bookstore around the world. And so
Hay House, Doreen Virtue, Louise Hay.
Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it's been amazing because once you become a Hay House author, they connect you with all of their other people. So what's been beautiful is there's a whole slew of us who are women of color, which are from the new generation of Hay House authors. And we meet up and, I think it's made me less lonely because I wasn't seeing anyone else that looks like me writing global books and speaking on global stages. And so now I have girlfriends. So it's great.
What a great support network.
Yeah, it's great. The loneliness book made me less lonely.
That's
amazing.
the whole
That's
point.
the whole point, babe. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, before we let you go, Simone, tell us what you would love our listeners to take away. If there was one thing they take away from your book, what would you want that to be?
I know people think that the loneliness and human connection conversation is a mental health conversation, but I would like to tell you that we know that loneliness and lacking healthy connection is more dangerous for your physical health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, obesity, or an alcohol use disorder. So, by prioritizing connecting with people over overworking in our competitive Singaporean society, you are ensuring you will live for at least 3 or 4 years longer.
Listening to Read on Money FM 89.3. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, darling.